Good morning, Jeff Ketchum. How is my friend doing?
I'm in a cranky ass mood, quite honestly. Like, I hope that by the end of this hour, I'm in a better mood. But honestly, I've just been in a bad mood for days.
Well, that kind of sucks. But let me ask you this, because I'm in a good mood. And the reason I'm getting a good mood is because my kids go back to school on Wednesday. Like, do your kids start school this week?
Started school last Wednesday.
Well, I don't know how you're not in a good mood.
Well, because the goodness of that hit is gone. Like, it wears off quickly. Then you just get annoyed by everything else. So I was happy on Wednesday. That was Colin Simmons Day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess it's all a blur. Actually, it was Colin Simmons Day Thursday? It was Thursday.
Yeah, I think it was Thursday. I'm sorry. I guess if Liverpool pulls out a win, maybe you're a little bit happier on a Monday.
I would be much happier. That didn't happen, and it just added to like the list of shit.
Well, listen, I guarantee by the end of Overreaction Monday, you're going to be smiling.
Probably.
Be laughing.
But I'll still be cranky, I think. Like, I just want to fight people today.
Well, that'll be a lovely home for you guys, you and the wife today. And it's okay. Listen. Well, here's what we do know. Those dogs better not bark today, because
Peter will be at the crib before 3 o'clock.
Talk about that F around and find out. Wait till those dogs start barking, man. So, all right, catch. It's Overreaction Monday. It's our time to talk and shine. We clearly know you're not in the best mood, but we had some things that happened over the weekend. You know, I know you wrote a little bit about the freshmen. I don't know if that's something that is kind of an overreaction to you. I kind of gave an overreaction a little bit earlier about how, listen, based off of everything we heard about Arch this weekend, Steve Sarkisian better have one of these quarterbacks ready for 2024, because it's hard to hold on to two guys, especially we got talent in the room. What are you thinking, Ketch? Like, when I love one of your questions, where's your head at? What's one of your big overreactions, or at least one of your reactions from the past weekend?
Oh, let's go positive. Like, if I could go overreactions negative in a big way, but if we go positive, I think there are signs that this defense could be what this program needs it to be this season. It doesn't need to be the 86 Giants or the 85 Bears, but it needs to be good enough that when this team's putting up points, games don't turn into track meets. And I think one of the interesting things from the scrimmage was that outside of red zone work, the offense didn't do a lot against this defense. The secondary was forcing coverage sacks. The coaches were apparently getting on the quarterbacks to get rid of the ball earlier. I think that there are more good signs about this defense that, for me, it's a group that's got some question marks. They're not deeper at defensive tackle. They're still good, but they're not better than they were a year ago in losing Moro, Ajomo, and Keandre Coburn. You wonder about the pass rush. What's going to happen at that edge position? You think about the linebacker depth. Like, there are question marks facing this defense. But if we go based on what happened at the scrimmage on Saturday, maybe one of the overreactions for me on a Monday is that the defense will answer all of its questions and be one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the Big 12, which should put this team and program in a position to win a lot of games if the offense is every bit as good as we think it is.
Yeah, and by the way, Ketch, I did forget to mention before I go too deep that this portion of the show is brought to you by the rogueshop.com. Ketch needs a little bit of Rogue right about now. And but yes, rogueshop.com for all your legals, CBD, THC, and more. It's a good thing to help yourself just relax, just to chill out. Whether you need some help sleeping, I use it just to help myself sleep. Got some pain, some aches. You need the solves. Like, they've got it all. Richard and his wife do a fantastic job. They are Longhorn people. Go ahead. If you got that QR code, you go ahead and scan that with your phone. It'll take you right to where you need to go. But Rogue Shop, that's the place. The place that clearly catches in right now. He's like, man, I need some rogue product in my life. Rogueshop.com. Okay. So, Catch, you're absolutely correct. When I think about the defense, because it's hard for me to start it's a weird thing. And I think you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth where we don't necessarily like when people get picked on. And when I have a defensive conversation, it's hard for me not to feel like I have to stand up for Pete K to some point because that's the guy who was kind of the whipping boy in year one. He's the guy that everyone kind of looked at and was like, yeah, but Gary Patterson's here, and he's kind of got the guys going to be getting the credit. And then just not know, but about a month or so ago, people were just like, "Oh my God, I hope Gary Patterson comes back. I hope Gary Patterson comes back." And like, God, what could we be without where will we be without Gary Patterson? It's like, well, actually, it looks like you're going to be. It looks like not only are people signing up to play for him, but it looks like it's putting people in the positions to succeed. And sometimes people will tell you, Catch, that the defense is a little bit of ahead of the offense, at this point for scrimmages. But to be able to when we know, like, okay, we don't have as many questions about the offense as we do the defense, and for that defense to kind of stand up, to be able to have those guys come in, get the pressure, which was a really an important thing. You said, to your point, having DBs in coverage, that are making the quarterbacks hold on to the ball a little bit longer to cause the fumbles. That's been something that they've been working on all throughout training camp. So they're able to get a couple of turnovers. Yeah, I think it's not a good day for the Texas, and the Texas defense. But I just think about Pete K, and I think to myself, you know what? It's a good day for Pete K as well. Like I said, I think he's kind of become my sympathetic figure of any of the coaches on the staff. Don't know him. Don't know him. I talked to him twice in my lifetime, I think, at the University of Texas, because he doesn't make it, Sarkisian doesn't make guys available. But yeah, I think from a positive standpoint, really good day for that defense.
I feel like people who talk about PK just don't know what they're talking about. I mean, one of the things that gets really overlooked in season one under PK was that the talent base wasn't great, that you had a lot of guys who were contributing now that were younger players that hadn't quite developed fully, but there weren't a lot of NFL dudes coming into the league after year one. I think he's done a good job of adjusting on the fly the talent base that's on hand. And then, you start to see when they bring in big time recruits. Malik Muhammad gets a pick 6 on Saturday. Anthony Hill is a guy that's drawing rave reviews early on. Like, no surprise, you get big time talent, and then suddenly inside of the defense, they start playing like big time players. I don't know that what PK, this is for better or worse, because I don't think PK is a great recruiter, but what he's working with early on, we always talk about Bill Parcells wanting to pick the groceries if he's going to make the meal. I don't think in year one, PK got to pick the groceries. He was trying to make a meal out of the groceries that Tom Herman left in the fridge. There was some expired milk in there. The butter had some mold on it. And I think that this defense is headed in the right direction. They're adding better pieces. And, PK's history at Washington suggests he knows what he's doing. He didn't forget how to coach. He didn't forget how to develop players. And I think there was a real rush to judgment in year one. And it's probably a good learning exercise for everybody involved to not overreact so early into a project. The defense, I thought, made great strides last year. Now, the real question for PK is when, I think it's still somewhat the same issues as year one. If David Bend is your starting linebacker, what does that mean? And is it PK's fault if there aren't any better options at that spot? Now, I would say going into year three, he certainly has more fingerprints on whatever this year's defense is going to be from a personnel standpoint than he did in year one. But, if there are issues with this defense, they're still personnel related. And you could say scheme in the sense that what he wants to do, I think there are still question marks about whether or not all of the players on the field match exactly what it is that this scheme needs. But I like PK. His history as a defensive coordinator is almost as good as anybody in college football. I don't worry about PK. I worry about the talent on the field making plays.
You know what's interesting, Catch, when you made that really awesome refrigerator analogy? You know what's interesting though, Catch? There are still some leftovers that are in the refrigerator. We look at this defense, the guys are going to start like Byron Murphy. When we talk about him, Tavondre Sweat, like these are guys that they inherited. Sorrell, is a guy that they inherit. Jalen Ford, like a lot of the guys who they're going to be leaning on. Like, to his point, Benda's been around forever. Some of those guys in the defensive backfield, they're still going to be leaning, ironically, Catch, on some of those carryovers. Now, the good part, Catch, is that these guys in year 3 for a lot of them. So like this should be, even though you inherited them, they should be, at a further, ahead place. But so maybe you could say they're probably better developed. They're definitely in better shape. That's something I wrote about over the weekend. They looked the part, but it's been interesting that, to your point, kind of mixing in the old and new of like, hey, that this is what we got and this is what you inherited. But this is what you got. Hey, they got the phone beat the dogs. So we inherited. This is what you got. Versus, hey, you still got to develop some of these guys. So I don't know if this is the cake is baked kind of thing. Like I don't know what this is where we're at, but it is interesting still working with some of those carryovers, but actually develop them into really good. I will say elite guys, but pretty good college players at this moment.
I should probably walk back my comment a little bit. I was speaking more along the lines of what was ready to go and play inside of that scheme from day one. Because the truth of the matter is, they are the biggest knock against this coaching staff early on, I think, is on the defensive side of the ball, where they have not brought in. Now it's changing, right? Because a lot of I mentioned Malik Muhammad. I mentioned Anthony Hill. I mentioned you haven't mentioned him yet, but you think about a guy like Derek Williams. But if we look at the last few, let's just look at the main contributing players on this team: Barron Sorrell, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Jalen Ford, David Benda. You can go through the secondary as well, and Jahdae Barron, Jaron Thompson. I'm at 9 right now. Those are all Tom Herman recruited guys, all of them. Now, it's always you and I have laughed about this in the past, where we talk about who gets credit for. If they're terrible, it's the guy that recruited them.
Yeah.
If they're great, it's like, look at how good of a job I did developing them.
Correct.
But, one of the knocks I think about this staff is that going into year 3, not enough good players have been developed from the guys they've hand selected. They haven't really done a good job of developing defensive linemen. I can go almost like the top 5 or 6 defensive linemen are all Tom Herman guys. So they haven't done a good job of really beefing up the defensive line since Sarkisian's been here. You look at the linebackers, we know that all of those young guys are here, but it's a lot to ask true freshmen to come in and start at linebacker.
Yeah.
It is the responsibility of this coaching staff to have. They could have gone into the portal. There are a lot of things, other decisions they could have made that wouldn't necessarily have them depth-wise, I think, in such a pinch at the linebacker position. I think in the secondary is the one area they've been really aggressive. They have gone out and gotten Ryan Watts. They have gone out this offseason and gotten Jalen Catalon. They have gone out this offseason and got Gavin Holmes. They've been very aggressive in beefing up that area of the team. It hasn't happened, I think, in the front portion of the defense. And we've been talking about this question for a while. Why didn't they address that area more They did go out and get Trill Carter, but I think that had a lot to do with the fact that they had one scholarship left. So they took a flyer on a guy. I don't know that, I think that they could have done something if they'd known exactly what the scholarships were going to look like. And that, because that stuff's fluid, maybe they go out a little bit earlier and go get a few. They absolutely should have beefed up their linebacker unit. They could have gone out, got a grad transfer. There are a lot of starting level linebackers that were in the portal. Maybe that improves you. Maybe that gives you the type of depth that a guy like Trill Carter gives you on the defensive line. I think, though, that what this staff's been very consistent about is that when they recruit young players, the edge position is a perfect example. They don't want older guys coming in and blocking the path of the young guys, but it means in the immediate, in the short term, you're not better off for it. Whereas in the long term, you probably are. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you're the coaching staff. But again, I'm more optimistic about this defense. These are things that I've been saying about the defense going into the season, that there are still these question marks. It's weird. We don't really know what Ethan Burke is. So how good is he exactly? If the light switch comes on and he plays really well this season, then they'll be justified in not going out to the portal to maybe look for someone to improve that area. If they don't, it kind of looks like they did a year ago, where they went with Ovio Gofu for a second straight year, not really having any other options in 2022. And it left them in a position where they were just okay at arguably the most important position on the defense. There's a reason why we all went cuckoo for our Cocoa Puffs for both, I think, Anthony Hill, but I'm really thinking of Colin Simmons. I mean, that position is so important. If Colin Simmons were on campus right now, what would that competition look like at the edge spot? I will say this. The guys that are there in the edge, that light switch better be found in the next 3 or 4 months. Because if they have it, the guys that haven't found it, I think will find themselves behind a true freshman very early when he shows up on campus. And that might be screaming it's time to get the hell on out. If you're a sophomore or a junior, you're in your second, third year, and you're being leaped by a guy who's on campus for a week. I think it's imperative for Ethan Burke that he put a marker down this season. And I think Ethan Burke is the obvious guy because he's in the starting position, but every guy behind him needs to be thinking about doing the same thing, because 5-star help is on the way, and they did not take Colin Simmons to put him on the third team when he arrives. I mean, CJ Baxter running with the first. Think about the 5 stars on campus, right?
Yeah.
CJ Baxter already working with the ones. Jonte Cook already working with the ones. Malik Muhammad may not quite be there, but you know how you start working with the ones? Pick sixes and scrimmages. That's how you start doing those types of things.
Good start.
So this is not a staff that babies their war daddies that they take in recruiting. And, so I think it's a good thing that we're seeing Ethan Burke get better. I just wonder what that means. It's so hard when ones are working against twos and twos are working against ones and threes are working against threes. A lot of times it's just tough to gauge exactly what it all means. For instance, Ethan Burke, I had heard that one of his big plays, and forgive me if this was something that you reported on, War, I may not be credit, but that he may have beaten Cam Williams on Saturday. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? You know what I mean? Like what? Yeah. Cam Williams isn't a starter. Mm-hmm. He's not better than Christian Jones. He's not better than Kelvin Banks. So I don't know how high to get necessarily for some of these things, because it's not apples to apples with every comparison.
Yeah, and by the way, to your point of the 5 stars, even though it's I know you're talking about this year, but even Kelvin Banks started, right away as a 5-star. Quinn was in here, he transferred in, he started. Like the only 5-star right now on campus is having to wait his time is Arch Manning, and he, by the way, if you have 70-yard runs and you walk, to your point, and then you are the person that people are talking about as far as quarterback, that's how you start moving up the ranks as well. So your 5-star analogy, is really good, and it's really spot on as far as that's concerned. Yes, when Colin Simmons comes, they didn't tell him, hey, you know what? if you sit for the next 3 years, you're going to have a shot. Like that pitch and that sell was really easy. You're playing.
Hey, Anwar, you're going to come and sit behind unproven players because they just happen to be older than you.
Yeah. Things had never been said in recruiting, right? Like that kid's at LSU. If that's the pitch, right? The pitch is you're going to play right away. We've got a spot for you. By the way, here, look at the film. You see what you see what we're working with. Like this is what you. So you're right. Like it's very important for all those guys, the Ethan Burks of the world, the Colton Vasics of the world, like. All those guys, like, you better show up and you better show out now because
on tap, like, better start making some plays, not in scrimmages either, in games. Like at the end of the season, if you got 5 sacks next to your name, okay, you can play. That is a really good return for your first year of playing. If you're sitting at 1, you're sitting at 1.5. They're not going to have a lot of patience, I think, for those players. So the good news is guys are making plays in scrimmages. That's the first step, I think, towards making them in games, certainly.
So we've been hearing over the last weekish or so, Catch, the name Alfred Collins is being talked about more. He obviously, played, had a little run with the runs and on the first team, on Saturday. Vernon Broughton is a name that's starting to hear a little bit more. You buying this, Catch? Like, and when you hear it, what is it? How does it resonate with you?
It's better than not hearing. I mean, because we've seen that too.
Definitely on the Alfred.
We've seen not hearing like anything at all about Vernon Broughton, and I think that. Alfred Collins for just a second. That was the rogue kicking in. The name just wasn't coming to my brain. I'm buying that they're better than they've been in the past because they are making plays in scrimmages. They are doing well in practice. Sarkisian's been pretty open about how well he thinks those players are playing. I've been wondering what it means for Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat that nobody seems to be mentioning their names. If you're a great player, Kelvin Banks is a perfect example. Nobody in camp's really talking about Kelvin Banks. That's what happens with great players. Nobody talked about Bijan last year. Your eyes in practice move towards the guys that perform that you're not used to seeing perform. So it's not a surprise when you don't hear great players being talked about in practice because duh. But when guys haven't been great and they've just been pretty good, they haven't been all conference, they haven't been consistent starters, and they are being talked about less than their backups, I don't know. I mean, we're part of if you believe in this defense is you believe that Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy potentially are upgrades over Ajomo and Coburn, right? Like, there are expectations that will take place. Well, both of those guys are in NFL training camps right now. I've seen it, Eagles camp. They're kind of raving about Ajomo early on. So those guys were pretty good. I have spent a lot of the last week wondering just how good are Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, given that they're not talked about right now. I've wondered, is Sark saying that to motivate? I've had all kinds of things run into my mind, right? Is he hyping these guys up to try to get more out of both of them, but also his starters? I don't know. I know we're 2 weeks into camp, and I just haven't heard a whole lot about the main primary 2 starters on this defensive line at defensive tackle. And on Saturday, one of the things that you reported was that both Collins and Broughton working with the first team. I mean, if your defensive tackle starters are badasses, they ain't giving up playing time to their backups. And that's happening right now. So I don't know. Like, I have questions, but the overall totality of what's happening on defense right now suggests that that's a pretty good unit. Even if I have questions about just how high the upside is in certain positions, certain players. But, when you hear that the offense is struggling to move the football on Saturday against an offense that on paper is loaded, and I don't care if Xavier Worthy wasn't on the field or that Jordan Whittington did get banged up. Their 3 wide receiver package right now, when that happens, Nayor, Mitchell, Cook, and they got dudes that we think are going to be future first-round draft picks on the field, even when they might be out their senior slot guy and their potential first-round draft pick junior wide receiver. So, I was impressed to see that the defense was the star of the show on Saturday. It gives me really high hopes about the secondary. It felt like on Saturday that the secondary, the entire group, was a star. And, Malik Murphy struggled, and I think that was probably 2s against 1s on War. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. He certainly would have been 2s against some 1s. You hope that they're doing 1s versus 1s, but that more times than not in practice, it's 2s versus 1s. So to hear that Malik Murphy struggled a little bit on Saturday, not a huge surprise. But the 2s seem to have, and Malik Murphy intercepts Malik Murphy, so that was probably 2s versus 2s when that happened. To hear that Quinn Ewers didn't have his best day either, that receiving core kind of got locked down a little bit. I didn't hear A.D. Mitchell's name for the first time all year on Saturday. Did you?
No. I heard it was out there, but
yeah,
that was about that as far as playmaking or things to that effect. We didn't hear about touchdown receptions or anything to that effect.
So I'm not critical of Mitchell. Instead, I'd give an attaboy to the defensive backs. I think so if you want my biggest Monday overreaction, it might be that low-key the secondary is maybe second behind the wide receivers in terms of the biggest overall strength on this team. And on Saturday, they were a bigger strength. On Saturday, those guys would have said, hey, you guys might be getting all the hype. Y'all didn't do nothing against us on Saturday other than a little bit of success in the red zone. Kudos to those guys. They're balling out. They're playing really well. And Texas has so many guys on War that I'm fascinated to see what combinations they work with, because it feels like there will be 5 guys on the bench that are really good that they all can't be on the field at the same time.
So, Ketch, let's go ahead and then let's have a balanced conversation then here, because the defense is good, right? But on our show and all shows, we always strive to keep it a buck. We always strive to keep it real when no one's going to candy coat it or blow smoke up anyone's butt here. The offense on the flip side is the defense did well and the offense did struggle. And so some of the things that you mentioned, but things that happen. So first of all, you got Xavier Worthy, who's not out there because of this illness. It's at least 2 practices that he's missed. Jordan Whittington gets banged up while he's out there. But then we hear about the quarterbacks and, a little bit some interceptions. Now, some may say, a receiver ran the wrong route and Isaiah Nayor ran the wrong route. And that's what the results of one of the interceptions. We hear about, one of the wide receivers not having the best day. There's a Jatavian Sanders, small thing where he falls down on one play catch and then he fumbles, on another one. We gets a ball kind of knocked out. It's overreaction Monday. You don't want to overreact, but when we're getting the offense and stuff, and the CJ Baxter looked good at times. Like, I'm not saying that the whole offense was just this absolute train wreck or anything to that effect. We've heard things about CJ Baxter. There's some good stuff that happened on the offensive line as far as guys moving in rotation and things to that effect. But from the skill position where we expected Texas to just be more dominant there, it really wasn't that over on that Saturday. And I want to see what you left and what your thoughts were after hearing about kind of the offensive struggles.
I don't read a whole lot into it. And maybe that's wrong, right? Maybe alarm bells should be going off. I think the defense had the better day. I remember one time in high school, I got into a fight with a guy, like in the gym. And I was bigger, stronger. I should have just whooped this guy's butt, and there shouldn't have been anything else about the story. But I can remember, like, after I hit him a few times, I was on his back. I was on top of him. He's covering up, but I played to the crowd a little bit that was watching.
Okay.
Like, I'm waving my arms. I'm winking at people. I'm like trying to get everybody hyped. And oh boy, Billy just sweeped my leg. And then before I knew it, I caught one right on the nose. Bam, blood's going everywhere.
Oh.
And it's a reminder that sometimes, even when you're better than the other guy, if you're not on your A game, you can walk away with a bloody nose. And that's what happened to the offense on Saturday. The defense got the better of them. But Jatavion Sanders had a tough practice, it sounds like, right? But I don't really worry about Jatavion. I think you're right. The offensive line. What we didn't hear on Saturday was that the offensive line got pushed around. We heard that indecisiveness on the quarterback's part at times. The running game was solid. I think nobody was saying that they couldn't run the ball. I think the passing game on Saturday was the part that didn't get off the ground. And I think that's going to be okay. I think the passing game's going to be fine. But so I can't lie, right? We talk about keeping it a buck. I can't pretend that hearing that Ewers held onto the ball a few times too long and that frustrated the coaches on a day when the offense didn't do a lot. The passing game wasn't really working. There was a little bit of like I think my bigger concern is, do we believe, Anwar, that at some point this season, the backup quarterback is going to be needed?
For me, only because of injury.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You and I have just done too many of these seasons where pretty routinely the backup quarterback's called on.
Have we had a season where the quarterback has played in every single game? Because I even feel like in Sam's last year, I feel like he was
banged up.
Yeah.
But he played.
Uh-huh.
But that's it. And it was even Sam banged up, like the walking wounded, but kind of gutting through a season more times than not. I mean, we could go back and count them, I'm sure, but the backup quarterback at some point every season, it seems like, is needed to start a game or two. And I think my biggest concern coming out of Saturday was I don't know where the starting quarterback position is. I don't think we're looking at, ironically, the past two seasons, I think the Longhorns have had better backup quarterback play because you had a Hudson Card that was competing for the starting job. And at one point, roughly, I don't know what the day it was, but almost like 365 days ago, there was that rush of, is Hudson Card going to be the starter? There were people who were certainly telling us that it was about to happen. Then the year before, you had the Casey Thompson Hudson Card situation where the loser of that battle, which was initially Casey Thompson, ends up being a good player. Like he ended up, they weren't shabby at the backup quarterback position. I think through circumstances, Texas is just really young at the backup quarterback position in ways that it hasn't been for the last few years. And I'm curious, to see how far these guys grow and mature in the event that they're called on at some point this season. You wouldn't want a 2-week injury to Quinn Ewers to derail the entire season. And I feel like the last 2 years specifically, Texas felt pretty good about being able to play through a quarterback injury if forced to. And I don't know right now. I don't know that they're not, but I definitely don't know that they are.
Can I ask you something that is going to sound somewhat sacrilegious? And I think
Careful, it's Monday. We got a long week in front of us.
We do have a long week, but I want to ask something that I know nobody in the chat is going to agree with. I fully understand that what I'm going to ask, people are going to think that I hit the rogue product already. If there was if anything happened, and let's say Quinn had to miss a quarter, 2 quarters, and I won't go into a game. So let's just say he has to miss a quarter.
He's just got the flu. and he's over on the sidelines puking his guts out.
There you go. Yes, there you go.
And they need the backup to play because Quinn has lost 5 pounds in the last 5 minutes.
Do you consider throwing in Charles Wright instead?
God, no. What the fuck is
Wait. Charles Wright. Wait a second.
You're right. I'm laughing by the end of the overreaction.
Wait a second. Charles Wright's not my neighbor. I live in Cedar Park. So I have no connection to him. Like, I know who's Onward's source now. It's Charles Wright. Like, no. But I'm asking a serious question. Do you consider saying, Charles Wright was almost a play away from playing, what was it, against West Virginia? It was, I think, last year. Like, Charles Wright has gotten it. Like, I'm just asking.
I don't understand. Based on what?
Just based on experience. And being in the program longer and probably knowing the playbook extremely well.
You trying to get Malik to transfer?
I'm not trying to give him a transfer.
You are trying. I thought you were on the other side of the Malik Murphy bus. Now you're trying to get him to transfer.
No, I'm not trying to get him to transfer.
Do you think the second quarterback should be replaced by the fourth quarterback?
Question.
I don't know. The answer is no.
Just asking. It's Overreaction Monday. It's Overreaction Monday.
That is the best overreaction, Anwar, you have ever had.
Thank you.
It is. Like, honestly, I might make a plaque with a big gold star on. I don't know. It wouldn't be a lame plaque. It would be a cool plaque. You could hang it up on the wall behind you. Greatest Monday overreaction ever. Now, look, the thing is, and look, you play Arch.
Charles.
Arch, and you know what? I think Anwar, the 4 games is always the wild card on this, and that I just no. I mean, no.
Okay. I prefaced it by saying, well, 2 things. One, I told you. What?
I've never seen this on one of our shows before.
What is it? What's the comment? Hey, someone did ask if they drug test the employees. The correct answer is no.
No.
No,
we do not.
So no, we do not drug test employees. So you too could work at Orange Bloods. All right. It was just here's one thing that I know that came of that question. I did make you laugh, and I told you before the end of the show I would make you laugh.
Thank you for throwing yourself on the grenade. That's friendship right there. That's what that is. That is someone doing another person a solid by just throwing themselves on the grenade. But I think, Anwar, to your point, though, I think you asking that question is evidence of kind of where we are with regards to we don't really know what's inside these backup quarterbacks. One of the things I always said about Malik Murphy's spring game performance was that he was really good. But one of the things that we had heard, I at least had heard about through the spring, was that he had some up and down practices. First half of camp, he's not even involved. He gets involved in the second half of camp, and there were days when he was impressive. And then there were days when he wasn't. It's very much similar. Arch is a little bit like that. I mean, Saturday he had a really good scrimmage, but we've heard of other days when he struggled at times. And so I think what we're looking at is proof of a backup quarterback situation that goes through some peaks and valleys, and that consistency every single day is the thing that backup position is missing a little bit. And if called upon to be the number one guy for whatever reason, I think there are question marks about just how good that group will be. I think there's a lot of proving to do. I think Malik, you tell me if you disagree with this.
Okay.
Malik Murphy is going to be the backup quarterback, right? Going into the season, but I don't know how good he is. And I don't know really what the distance between him and Arch Manning is, not just at this point, but in a few weeks from now. I wonder if we'll truly have some answers. I tend to think that we won't, because how could we? We don't get to see them every single day, but based on reports and conversations that we have with sourcing, the backup quarterbacks on any given day can give you a variety of different things. And that can be problematic in a world where you're suddenly, if I told you that, hey, your starting linebacker has good days and he has bad days, and on any given day, you don't know whether or not he's going to be able to make tackles or not, we would go, oh, that guy can't be on the field. Mm-hmm. When it's your backup quarterback, sometimes you have to find out the hard way. And I do think that the backup I think Quinn has a chance to have, I think Quinn will have the best statistical passing season in the history of the program if he stays healthy, which would indicate they've made improvements at the starting quarterback position from this year to last year. But I think the backup quarterback position isn't as strong. The backup quarterback a year ago is a starting quarterback at Purdue right now. The backup quarterback this year, I don't know what we're completely dealing with. I think I would have felt a lot better about this if we had heard that Malik had a pretty good day. Hearing that he really struggled on Saturday, I find myself just bewildered a bit with regards to what we think we know and what we should expect if called upon.
Well, the thing is, and by the way, I'm glad everyone enjoyed the Charles Wright thing. But the thing is, Catch, on this one, as we have this conversation, and this is important, and guys, we're back to serious mode. The Catch, Sark's got to get this quarterback thing right, because he got it wrong previously. That whole Casey Thompson, Hudson Card thing, he got wrong. Like it, and there's no disrespect, but when you bench a guy after week 2, you admit to yourself that whatever you thought you saw and whatever you thought you believed to be true, it wasn't. Because when push came to shove, there was a certain measurable, there was a certain intangible that he thought that Hudson Card had. And then when Arkansas happens, he says to himself, he ain't got it. And all of a sudden he goes to Casey Thompson, who then, by the way, Casey, when healthy, Catch, takes off. Like Casey, he had an incredible run. When it was almost like every drive he was on, he was scoring a touchdown. And then you wonder to yourself, wait, what the hell happened in this whole evaluation process? Because this guy is balling. He's balling out right now. And the other guy was, didn't meet those expectations. This can't be something like that this year, Catch. This can't be, it looks close and you're short, because when that person comes in, if that person has to come in, if Quinn is sick or whatever, it can't be I really believed in this guy, but the other guy was really the guy. Like, this is one thing you've got to absolutely get right. And it kind of goes back to what I had in the beginning. For me, Catches, it's so important to make sure that you've got somebody ready to go in 2024. Like that guy has got to be able to hit the ground running without question, because again, we live in a transfer portal era. And again, I'm not trying to speak it and make it happen, but Catch, it's reality. It just is what it is. Guys aren't patient. What I kind of said in my intro, the Roshan Johnsons of the world, there aren't many of those guys that are out there. They'll say, I'll just sit behind somebody because that's just who my DNA and my makeup is. Like he's a rarity. He's an absolute rarity. The norm is I waited a year. I waited a few months. Like, I ain't waiting no more. So he's got to be able to know, like, I've got that guy ready just in case somebody leaves, but be able to know, like, I've got it for sure. And that's why, like, the Rice game, the Wyoming games, like, these things become really crucial in the evaluation process.
No, and if you're Texas, you really need to win those games emphatic enough that you can see Malik take a few real series, and just, that work will be imperative. He'll get more out. It's why sometimes people are like, why did you even play that game? All he did was come in and hand off. But to get a feel for the speed of the game, just to be on the field a little bit, I think is critical for these guys. And I think one of the stories, certainly of the Rice game, is how badly can Texas beat Rice so that it opens the door to get Ewers off the field and your backup quarterbacks a chance. I think personally what happens in that game is that before the third quarter is over, Malik Murphy's taking snaps. He gets a few drives in that are real offensive drives, more running than passing, but he'll get to throw the ball a little bit. And then I think probably the last 6-7 minutes of the game, it might be Arch Manning's turn. And all he'll probably do is hand the ball off. But maybe he'll get to throw it on a 3rd and 7 or something like that. But, I think you got to get those guys some game reps. And I think the good news is there's still a lot of camp left. One of the things about Malik and Arch, you think about Malik, he was hurt so much of last year that he really didn't get all of the practice reps that you would have liked to have seen him get. Even this year, he misses the first part of the spring, and so he hasn't had his full allotment of practices. Same thing with Arch with regards to he's still such a young guy. It looked like on Saturday that he had made real progress from where he might have been even a week before. So it's not crazy to think that in the next 2 weeks, both of these guys hit a stride that looks completely different than what we would have seen on Saturday, but it still needs to happen. But I think everybody needs to be on alert that talking about the early struggles of the quarterbacks, it doesn't mean that we think that it's going to continue. It doesn't mean that we don't think these guys have upside. It doesn't mean that we think Texas is screwed if there is an injury. It's merely a snapshot of what it looks like on August 13th, 14th, whatever today is, a few weeks away from the first game. There's still maturation that needs to take place. There's still more that needs to be seen from that position. And I wonder, Anwar, how different the conversation would sound like if it had been Quinn struggles on Saturday, Malik struggles on Saturday, Arch struggles on Saturday.
Oh, boy.
The Arch piece of this, Anwar, I think has allowed everybody to just celebrate in the Arch part. So it means the other stuff doesn't really get a lot of attention. But, there's a complete conversation to be had about the quarterback position. And maybe Arch having the day that he did on Saturday takes us away from that a little bit, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in what we think Arch is eventually going to become.
Yeah, well, that definitely helped, like just because that gives everyone a positive. Like everyone's, oh well, you know what, Arch looked good. That's that. Yeah, that was a really good day. Like
it was a good day.
And you can excuse everything else, right? You're like, it's all right. Malik, it's okay. The dogs are here. Quinn, it's okay. Like all that is you can excuse that pretty easily, but but it does help. So let me ask you this, Catch, as we get close to the top of the hour. From a positive note, though, DJ Campbell, Catch, he kind of seems to be settling into that right guard position. So we've seen a little bit of him. I'm kind of curious of like your thoughts as this offensive line starts to settle in. It looks like Jake Majors doesn't have to worry about anyone coming for his spot. Looks like he's settled in as well. But your thoughts on Campbell and kind of, being one of those guys in the first team now.
One of my dogs is going ape shit over here.
It's the bingo card.
Full transparency. The mailman or the Amazon guy or something showed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, Peter will be by in a little bit. I think the DJ Campbell story right now is one of the best parts of camp that we're seeing. I think he's a 5-star guy. It's year 2. Now's about the time that you'd like to see that light switch come on, because if it takes 3 years, doesn't mean that he won't be a good player. Doesn't mean that he won't eventually be maybe a great player to some degree, but it would make you start to wonder, was he slightly overrated? I mean, 5-star guys, when they hit, don't typically take 3 years. So it's year 2. And a week ago today, last Monday, it was Alex, I think, that was the first one to report Campbell's working with the first team, not just working with the first team, but running out with the first team. He's with the ones. And it seems like that pretty much stayed that way all week long. We get to the scrimmage on Saturday. He's one of the guys that gets selected as offensive lineman that continue to look good. He's not doing anything to give that job up. And when you look closely at what's happening with Cole Hudson, he's working some at center now. He's also working some at right guard, but he's cross positioning. Mm-hmm. If Hudson were really challenging DJ Campbell for that right guard position, really, he ain't moving over to center. I mean, I suppose they could, but if he's arguably one of your best 5 guys and his best position is at guard and he might start over DJ Campbell, I think you're probably doing something else. From my experience, my perspective, the moment a guy that was in a battle starts moving over to another position to get some reps, to provide some depth, I think it's a real sign that the guy that started in front of him has grabbed a stranglehold on the job. And that's exactly what you want. He's the guy with the highest upside. And if he starts to come on, and you've got Kelvin Banks and you got Christian Jones, it's one less question about the interior of that offensive line, and I think that if you're a Texas fan and the idea is win a championship this season, the interior of that offensive line has to be so much better than it was a year ago. And I think that the DJ Campbell things we're hearing is incredibly promising, because I think the concern would have been that he and Hudson are just going back and forth and they can't make a decision between the two, so they're going to play both. That feels problematic. It feels a little bit like what we say about quarterbacks, that if you've got 2, maybe you don't have one. I feel like in this instance at that position, DJ Campbell has proven that there's, at least he's starting to prove that they have one, and that there will be depth that they're confident in behind him. But I think that job is his, and it may be his for the next few years. And you couldn't ask for a better thing, I think, if you're a Texas fan that has his eyes on big prizes. That area of the team has to get better. And the guys that they've recruited to be the answer to these problems is starting to emerge.
Yeah, when we start hearing things like Catch, like, wait, so DJ Campbell kind of started in some games for us last year, so we kind of view him as kind of a veteran guy. That's almost coach speak to let you know, like, that's our guy, right? It's don't think we're putting some rookie out there who just is, who doesn't know what he's doing. Like, they feel pretty confident in that. So the growth and the development there, and I guess when it's all said and done, there's a Kelvin Banks, and there's a reason why Kelvin Banks will probably be a day 1 pick when it's all said and done. Like, that's the guy, like you say, he comes in day 1, and there's other guys who may be 5 stars that take a little bit longer, but doesn't necessarily mean that they won't get there. It just takes a little bit longer. And I think now we're starting to see that development, like the confidence in them, like putting him in there in all those positions. And it's, good to see for him, and good for him too, by the way, Catch. And I think it goes back to the thing that you kind of keep hitting towards and not even alluding to, but kind of saying directly, which is, when you're a program that recruits 5-star players, you've got to get 5-star players on the field pretty soon. Like, you can't have a 5-star sitting in year 3 talking about, like, we're going to see what happens. Like, then you may have a Ben Davis of the world, but that's only because you've recruited a bunch of other 5 stars where it doesn't matter when he gets in or not. But when you only have a small handful, you've got to get those guys in. So getting a guy like DJ Campbell is important for other 5 stars. So looking and saying, like, okay, when I come here as a 5-star, I am going to play right away. Now, when you get to the Georgia status, Catch, then you can just, like, all right, you maybe guys have to sit. But right now, those guys need to get in. Those guys need to get to play. One other thing I want to ask you about too, and before I let you go and handle everything and hopefully not beat up anyone. Hopefully you'll leave here a little bit better than you walked in. Running back position, Catch, what were your thoughts about the running back position this weekend?
if a freshman is even, he's leaving. And CJ Baxter seems even-ish with Jonathan Brooks. I think it's going to put Jonathan Brooks in CJ Baxter is the future of the running back position. And if, by the way, I'm pretty sure it was before you went on the air, somebody in the chat compared Jonathan Brooks to Jamal Charles and almost had a heart attack and died. But right here, just boom. What happened to Catch? Well, he read that Jamal Charles comparison and fell on his face. I think CJ Baxter is the future. He's already getting first-team reps. When they get to the games, it's going to take everything Jonathan Brooks has to eventually keep CJ Baxter from taking that job. What we didn't hear last year was that Bijan was sure Roshan worked some with the first team, but it wasn't a position battle. I mean, everybody just kind of accepted that Bijan is the freak of all freaks and that Roshan would be one of the best players on the team otherwise if he was playing. It's not quite apples to apples when you look at this year's running back situation. I like Jonathan Brooks, but I think when the games start, he's going to have to do everything he can to keep CJ Baxter from taking his job. I think it's bad for Jaden Blue. Like if you're looking at guys right now who are kind of behind the eight ball, I haven't really heard anything about Jaden Blue since practice started. Like he's just not been a name that's coming up. He's not working with the ones the way Baxter and Brooks are. When you consider that Keelan Robinson is, we know that he's a factor that the coaches, there are days when he's the second running back to run out on the field. They clearly like him. So I think there's a top three, and it feels like Jaden Blue's in a position right now where somebody has to be the odd man out, and it might be him. They'll play three running backs, and I think they'll rotate two quite a bit. It's hard to see a world where the fourth guy is coming in a lot at running back. There just are so many mouths to feed. And at the running back position, I think they know who their top two guys are. Down deep, they won't say it because they don't want guys to transfer. But the fact that those two guys are elevated right now in the hierarchy of the running backs in practice, it's not an accident. And I think, everybody loves all of the players on the roster, but not all of the players on the roster are always going to have major roles to fill in their career. And in this age of the portal, if we get to year 2 or year 3 and a guy is still trying to knock down the wall to get into the field, he's probably going to leave. And I think the thing that would worry you the most if I were Jaden Blue is that this isn't a running back position that, other than Keelan Robinson, which is, he doesn't do the same things that Jaden Blue does. Everybody's returning, and they're adding 2 badass freshman running backs from next year's class. We know this staff likes to play freshmen. The worst place you can be on the depth chart as a Texas football player is a fringe 2 or 3, because the next group of kids will come in and they won't wait long before they put those guys ahead of guys that can't quite elevate themselves beyond, are you a second teamer or a third teamer? And how, I think it's a bad spot to be in.
Yeah, by the way, we even heard, I heard the name Trey Wisner, a little bit over the weekend as well. So, to your point, like it haven't heard a lot about, Jonathan. But now, that being said, what's going to happen, Catch? Someone from Texas is watching this, right?
He's going to come speak to the media on Tuesday.
Yeah. Or that will be the talking points that they tell Sark, like, hey, they're saying you're not mentioning this. So Sark probably, he has a press conference today about 4:00. Watch all of a sudden. So the guys who look good today, like over the weekend. I'll be remiss I didn't mention Jonathan Blue has looked good. I've been on CJ Baxter looking good. Those guys are battling out. Malik has done really well. Liked a little bit of what I saw from Arch. Like all the guys that we say like are being mentioned, he's just gonna run down a list because he's been prepped beforehand and he's just gonna go through it. Absolutely do. All right, let's do a super chat here. And then that should definitely put you in a good mood. Super chats, I know, make you smile. Baxter and Hill starting sooner than later. think it's just actually more of a comment than it is a question, Catch. But he's saying C.J. Baxter and Anthony Hill. If you had to put a number, what week do you think, if you had to say either one's going to start this year, which week would you say you would think one of those guys, or what either one starts?
I'll go Hill week 3 and Baxter week 4.
Okay. Fair enough. Writing it down. Catch, you want to go ahead and handle the rest of what you need to handle over there at the house?
Well, the problem is now the dogs are quiet. So
you feel like you can't leave on a high.
What's that?
You can't leave on this note, right? You want to stay a little bit longer?
No, I want to leave on a good note, but there's nothing to handle because the dogs 60 seconds later, they don't remember what happened. So if I go out there now, my dogs are like resting on the couch and sleeping. I can't go out there and be like, shut up. It's over. The moment is over. And so I almost just have to. And here's the thing. I really can't get mad at my dogs for barking when the Amazon guy comes 2 inches from the door.
Yeah.
I mean, they're dogs. That's literally what they do. It's my fault that my office is 10 feet away from the front door of the house. That's my problem. You have an office. If you had 3 dogs, your office is adjacent from your house.
Yeah.
So they could go crazy and you're okay. It's not my dog's fault that I chose to do the show in their play area. It is what it is.
You should do a fantasy draft. Why don't you do a mock draft or something like that? That'll be. Have you done any, by the way?
No.
I did one over the weekend and I just got tired. I was like, the thought process of doing sitting around, even if it's Fantasy Pros, right? The problem with Fantasy Pros is it goes so fast when you do it. It's just names. And so then I got to go and look to see who was taken because it goes really fast. And it's hard for me to kind of keep up. The
first world problems, Anwar.
Well, it's just the days that I used to do mock drafts, Catch. Just love to do them for hours and hours. And when I'm a dad and I got other things to do, mock drafts don't do it. I got to figure out who I'm going to keep with my keepers. I've got Trevor Lawrence and Odell Beckham. I got to figure out which one of those I got to do. So, all right, Catch, I'm not gonna let you go.
It's like you killed the momentum of the show talking about your fantasy outlook.
I did.
Now everybody's depressed.
But now that being said, we got 400, or at least over 400 people watching right now, Catch. So there is that.
And I'm in a better mood now than I was an hour ago.
And that's what counts, right?
But now I might go outside and my dogs and my wife might change it. That's the thing. I'm very wishy-washy. Very wishy-washy, Anwar. I'm smiling now, and in 30 seconds, I'm Ebenezer Scrooge all over again.
Take some more of our Rogue product, as we'll close it by saying, for all of your CBD, THC, Delta 8 needs, RogueShop.com has got you covered. There is that QR code. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Catch is trying to relax. And so there that is. Listen, clearly we don't drug test here at Orange Blood. So enjoy that Rogue Shop.
I like my employees on drugs. That's when they're creatively best.